A very good day to you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Country Talk here on Herman Manyora's YouTube channel. My name is Emma Sokinyi and I'm always glad to bring you up to date with comprehensive analysis of all that is taking place in our beautiful country, Kenya, and of course across the borders as well. This fine morning, I'm joined here by Professor Herman Manyora, who is a professor at the University of Nairobi. Prof, good morning.
How are you?
I'm okay.
How's life?
Life is good, so to say, because we are breathing, we are alive, and we thank God for that. We can see it's a little bit rainy in Nairobi.
That's good.
The weather is chilly, and we thank God for that. I want us to look at the ailing education sector in this country. A lot is actually happening in this particular sector, and owing to the fact that you are a stakeholder and of course one with a vast experience in this particular field, I believe that you stand at a point where you understand how things are working and going in this particular sector in the country. Let's start from the CBC. It seems that certain parents are actually fed up with what they term as CBC shenanigans, according to them, and they have resorted to going through the other curriculum, talk of the other international curricula that people actually, so there are a number of them are those who can actually afford ditching the CBC system. Do you think that this system has actually collapsed and has failed, and that is why parents have resorted to other alternatives?
There was no system called CBC. There was nothing like CBC in the first place. So there's nothing to collapse. It wasn't there. It was just a one big joke. Yeah. CBC is one big fat joke. Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. So how can it collapse and it was not even there in the first place?
So, but that is actually what is driving the country right now in terms of education sector.
Driving who? There's nothing.
Okay.
The education has collapsed in this country. Education, whatever little there was has now finally collapsed.
Talk to me about the word competency in that curriculum.
It is a contradiction. What does it mean? There was a PS or a CS, one of these things, they can't draw the distinction very well. He went somewhere in Rift Valley to launch CBC in a technical school. So some girls were coming, hairdressing, and they had other women sitting in front. We are now demonstrating CBC. What else was supposed to be done about hair? Si lazima nywele tengenezwe. So what is CBC about it?
So you don't totally agree with this?
It's all nonsense. Education is first about at a certain level. I was telling my students yesterday,
yes,
if I was in charge of education, children will just have to grow being children at the lower levels. And the only thing children should be engaged in is reading and storytelling. Only up to grade 3, 2, 3 there. Just reading and storytelling and loving school, loving reading. So that when your child comes home, they want you to read a book for them. Up to grade 3, around grade 2. Then from there, you begin to introduce those numeracy and literacy skill, writing, and a little of arithmetic, numeracy, Then you go like that. After a certain level, education is about knowledge. Growing the cognitive skills. With the cognitive skill well developed and grown and honed through the education, you can take on anything else. You don't need to go to school to learn how to build something. You develop a brain that can very easily learn how to build that thing. So, we cannot run away from knowledge. The school must provide people with knowledge. Knowledge means your cognitive skills have grown well. Okay? You are able to look at a situation and understand it. I don't know whether you get what I'm saying.
I'm getting you.
But to tell me that you want to grow somebody making things, that reminds me of slavery, the emancipation of slavery, of slaves. In America, once the laws to abolish slavery had been put in place, then the question was, what would you do? What will you do with the slaves? They have grown in people's homes all their lives, generations of them. Now you are telling them, go, you are free. So that became a very difficult question. We have set slaves free. What do we do with them? What do they do with themselves? How do they start new life? And a lot of theories came up. People like Booker T. Washington is famous for saying that the black people are good with their hands. So let's give them an education that makes them use their hands. They are drawing a distinct. I had somebody say like that from Japan. He was a Kenyan who was a marathon runner. I can't remember his day. He says he was combining Kenyan skills with Japanese. Japanese are good at thinking. Kenyans are good at things that are physical. You see that kind of stupidity. They are drawing a distinction between mental capacity and the capacity to do things using your hands. That's very stupid. The most important thing is the mental capacity of a human being. Once the mental capacity is developed fully through education, there's nothing else. There's nothing they can't do. Yeah, they can now do anything you want them to do. There's a day I had somebody talking about football. He was saying why European or whatever football is better than our. You see, most of the players you find are people who have been to school. Those days, not like now where everybody has been to school. So he was arguing. Even football requires some thinking, mental skills, thinking, ability to apply your brain. Other things remaining equal, a person who has not been to school, another one has been to school, and both of them who are supposed to be good in football, the one with education could be slightly better. In other words, he's able to combine. So the first thing is about the human brain to be developed to think. And that's what the education is about. And not this nonsense of saying competence. What do you mean by competence? Competence comes later on anything you want to do. But first you have developed your mental capacity. Yeah.
So in terms of development of the mental capacity, is that what the outcome that you see lacking in our current curriculum?
Yeah. It has been like that all along. But now it's being made worse.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the last nail in the coffin, if we were to borrow that cliche. Yeah, our education has been declining for many reasons. The moment we decided to pack our schools with children, we were sending them there for vices and for certificates, not for education. And many other things. 844 came, people didn't understand 844. 844 did not say, let our children go to school and learn physical skills, manual skills. No. It says, let a child grow knowing that there are many things you can do at home without calling for an artisan. If there's a wall that requires painting, you can paint. You just need to learn the basics. If you are shut, the button drops off. Do you need to take it to a fundi? You should just learn how to sew the button to return it. I have one of my shirts, which this one has disappeared. That's what 844 was meant to teach the children. But our education executors and planners turned that into a curriculum to learn how to do names. Hii inaitwa nini, sijui nini. Mtoto class 2. So it is the people at the top who don't understand what education is. They are the cause of the problem. But now with CBC is more than that. With the CBC is international politics. If you care to listen. Africa has the youngest population in the world. Africa population is growing to the west at an alarming speed. Japan, China, the West are not reproducing enough. Countries like China came up with the policies to stop people from giving birth. Now they want to reverse it. It's too difficult. People are not used. Even if you give them what, they can't. They can't imagine more than one child. And it's the government that led them there. Now the same government is frightened, the numbers. Remember, China has been overtaken by India in the past 2 years. So India is the most populous country, not China. So they are even trying to reverse that. In Europe, they are not reproducing themselves to sustain their populations. Because there's, I think it's 2 point something, I can't remember the ratio at which you must reproduce to be able to remain as a people in your country. Otherwise, your populations, indigenous, the people of that country will shrink, and the foreigners will be the majority. And that's what is happening in some of these countries. Yet Africa, the population is shooting up.
Yes.
That is worrying the West. Africa has the most youthful population. Meaning, if these people got a proper education, they can develop Africa. And that situation is frightening to Europe and other people and to Americans. Because a developed Africa is a nightmare for Europe. Europe survives, Europe, America, Japan, China survives on an underdeveloped Africa. And finally, the most frightening thing is that this youthful population is becoming more and more educated. Education is penetrating in Africa at an alarming rate to those people. If you don't stop the penetration and development of education in Africa, in a couple of years from now, Africa is going to have young men and women who are educated. These young men and women who are educated will not allow the exploitation that's going on in Africa, that a country with the most resources in the world is the continent that has the most resources in the world is the poorest continent on the world. And the people enjoying those resources are not Africans. That cannot be allowed. It's not tenable. Because so these young people, if they get educated, good education, critical education, they will not allow people to exploit Africa. And therefore, Africa must be put in check to remain underdeveloped and poor for it to be exploited by the West and other people. Okay. For that to happen, you must strangle education. Because education is a liberator. It will liberate the African. It will liberate the African man to stop the exploitation from the West. And therefore, the target is education in Africa. And what is happening in Kenya is a very good example. Throw some confusion.
So you're saying here
that CBC is that confusion that has been brought.
So there are actually foreign hands that are actually calling shots with regards to our education
system in the country. Of course.
Now, what
goes without saying.
You see, I was looking at the reason as to why parents are actually now, those who can afford are ditching the CBC system for the other international curricula. And I'm like, if those other curricula are actually better, why can't the country just adopt the others?
No, you see, I've already explained to you that nobody wants education for Africa.
Okay.
So, but they want a few of their slaves to live under the illusion that one day they will be like them.
Okay.
You know how it works. You get a few Africans and give them an illusion that they can be like the whites by throwing a few things to them. You know, like that kind of education, that if you take your children to these Muzungu schools, then you can be like them. You will never be like them. Because that education is grounded in a certain culture.
Okay. I get you. Let's talk about the transition as well, because we are expecting that the first lot of the students from the junior secondary school will actually transition to the senior, and something here that is quite frightening and has caused a lot of jitters among Kenyans is the exclusion of mathematics as a compulsory subject.
Yes.
This has been put there, and the minister is saying here that, look, it's not a must for somebody to actually do mathematics, or rather take mathematics as a subject in a senior secondary school. This has not gone well with so many people. I wonder what your view on that would be.
No, you see, I don't have a direct answer to that. It's a much more complex than they are trying to bring it out. Whether or not to make mathematics optional, it's not something that you can just wake up one day and do. No. It requires for soul searching. It requires for thinking, hard thinking. It requires involvement of professionals and experts. It requires comparative analysis. It requires an historical analysis. What have we gained by making mathematics comparison over the years? If there is anything, are we ready to lose it? If there's nothing, so we just go ahead and abolish it? Or is there anything we can do so that we gain from it? Is there an alternative? Because mathematics skills are also important. Are there alternatives we can bring on board? For example, when I was in school, those who could not, for some reason, either because of abilities or because the schools did not have laboratories, good laboratories, those who could not do physics, biology, and chemistry, schools which could not offer, or students who could not do, they had general science. General science offered less technical aspects of science, less laboratory work than general science. There was even health science. Why are we not trying to think along those lines? If we think mathematics for some reason should not be compulsory for whatever reasons, can we create alternatives so that students leave mathematics but also still have something to fall down to in terms of numeracy skills, arithmetical skills? Because wherever you go in the future, there are very few careers where these things are not required.
Okay.
I did education, and I know mathematics is involved in many other things. In thinking, in understanding certain situations, even in music. I learned those. You know, this education, I don't know why. Who are these people who are making decisions on education? Do they have what it takes to make those decisions? Do they understand? But it's not an easy question. I cannot pretend to have the answers, but I know if it is one day somebody waking up and saying mathematics is optional, that is wrong. But as to whether we should remove it or not, I don't have the answers. But I can give my thinking in a session where people are thinking. Yeah. All I know one thing, that mathematics is hated by students. You are a student, I'm sure you hated it.
Not really.
Many students hate mathematics. During our days, we used to have divisions. The best was Division 1, followed by Division 2. Those ones could go to A level. Division 1, automatical. Division 2, depending on how you got that Division 2, which subjects. Then Division 3, which some of us got. And then Division 4, to pass. Now, many students got Division 3 when their points were actual Division 1. They could not be given Division 1 because they had failed in mathematics. So a student will get distinction 1 was the best. 1, but 9 in mathematics. 9 meant you have failed. I have several 9s, I think, on my certificate. 9 means you have failed. So that failing in math means you can't get Division 1. It may mean you may not even go for A level sometimes, in some cases. The problem of mathematics has been, and remains poor teaching. So if I were to help the government and the country, I will tell them, let us look at pedagogy. Let us look at the teaching of mathematics. I went to school, unfortunately, and I want to use the word unfortunately 3 times, unfortunately. The teachers I'm talking about who are good teachers were white. In my school, I was telling my students, Juzi too, sciences were the easiest subjects because of those good teachers. I remember Mr. Tom teaching me biology. I remember Taylor, anybody who was in my school who knows me, who knows the school I'm talking about. Taylor, physics. Some lady, I can't remember, chemistry. By the time you are in Form 3, you had finished all the chemistry. We used to do mock from Form 3 with the Form 4s. Why? Because of the teaching. Sciences were the easiest for any student. People were running away from history and geography because you would fail. How would you fail mathematics? How would you fail science, chemistry, physics, biology? Everybody was getting one distinction, two. Because of the teachers who were teaching. Unfortunately, they were white. So the problem with mathematics is the teaching.
Okay.
As a teacher, and as a student, and as a parent, an educator, I can tell you the problem to address with mathematics is not to make it compulsory or optional, but to address the problem of teaching. The people who teach mathematics and sciences in this country are not capable of teaching those subjects. I saw when I went to college, the first thing teachers tell those doing biology, but zoo. This is but zoo. This is science. This is not like those people doing history and literature. A whole lot of people who teach science and mathematics in this country cannot teach those subjects. They are the ones that are making the subjects look difficult. But what is there to compare chemistry with English, for example? Because during our day, chemistry was contained in a small book called by Atkinson or Atkinson, I can't remember. Biology was contained in a small book, tropical biology, like this, long but few pages, by McKean, tropical biology. Chemistry, introduction to chemistry or something by Atkinson, I can't remember. Physics was slightly big, Abbott. But the point I'm trying to make, when it comes to physics or chemistry, the topics are so clear. They are just from topic 1 to topic so. If you learn them all, a question cannot come from anywhere else.
Okay.
Amana magani? Chemistry starts with after the basic introduction was chemical and let's do whatever processes. That's very simple. Physics started with light, ending with electricity. Biology ended with DNA or something like that. There are so definite topics like 10. Any good teacher teaching them has just definite material to teach in terms of chapters. Can you say that about English? The things you are supposed to know to be tested on as you enter an English exam are too many, too varied, too uncertain, that you cannot arrest them and teach the students, here it is, so now you are going to be tested. And there are other subjects that require a lot of critical thinking beyond memory. So, just to end the long story, instead of trying to make mathematics optional because students don't like it, let us address the issue of pedagogy. Why is mathematics the most hated subject in schools? Why is it the subject that people fail the most? Why are we running away from that? Why can't people like Kipsang call people, and I would want to be there myself, to find out what ways I wish my friend, my colleague, my role model, the late Professor Kodo Kombo, I wish he was alive. He will really be feeling sad. He started as a mathematics teacher, ending up as a linguist. And he knows the problem. He knew, just as I know, the problem with mathematics is the teaching. The teaching.
Okay.
So we need to solve the problem of teaching mathematics, to have the right people, to receive the right training, to be able to teach mathematics right, and to make children enjoy mathematics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Finally, let's talk about the recent order that was given by the ministry as well. Was it an order or a directive to principals of high schools to make sure that they surrender all the documents and certificates of students that have been withheld over the years because of pending school fee that was not paid back then? The teachers here are actually arguing and saying, look, at these people did not actually pay the fee, but the government has said here, release the certificates. How do we balance this? What do you make between
You see, government,
all these things? Yes.
I was following something St. Clair in Vihiga for a certificate for a young girl. and the people have refused to give it. This has been a government directive for many years.
Yes.
So sometimes government makes me feel very bad. When you say something as government, how can teachers defy what government has said? This is not a directive for 2 years or 5 years or 10 years. This directive has been there.
Yeah.
I have tried to help students get certificate from their former schools. I know how difficult it is. But it's a government directive, it's a government policy. But teachers ignore. So the minister must tell us how he allows principals, they like calling themselves principals. During our days they were headmasters. How he allows these headmasters to defy government directives to give certificates. He must tell us how, who are they? And that's why they say we have given fees guideline, 53,000. But schools just look at that and laugh. They charge 90, they charge 70. So is the minister in charge of his ministry? He should resign. It should not be a question of we are giving teachers the directives. It must be a structured approach. You start from Nairobi, those in charge of regions, those in charge of districts, counties, down to those in charge of sub-counties, and down if there's down. Give us a report within your county of how many certificates are in each school by year. So that should a teacher be found keeping a certificate, then that is an offense, even criminal. So the county education officer, through the sub-county education officers, DEOs, they are called DEOs, they will ensure they have a record of how each school must put down in writing how many certificates they have. And then the government will now make the arrangement of taking those certificates from them after creating sufficient storage at the sub-county and at the county level to get possession of those certificates and invite the owners to come and collect them. But to tell teachers we are giving you 2 weeks, that's nonsense. The minister should resign.
What should be the effect of the principals releasing these certificates?
Because what effect is there?
They're saying here, now look, we are having a problem with capitation in the country with regards to education sector.
Listen.
At the same time, you're saying here, you've always held this, that education should be free in the country. It is not free. So if at all the principals were to release these certificates, don't you think that it would be now some sort of a walk in the park for the other parents, even those who are still in school? People would just decide, let us not pay fee, because at the end of the day, we'll still receive our certificates. That's the fear of the principals as well.
Let us get things clear so that we understand the problem.
Yes.
There is a distinction between school fees and examinations. That examination is an external thing. The school is a mere center. The school is a mere
center.
The principal is a mere agent. That exam does not belong to the school. Umeelewa hapo? The certificates do not belong to the school. The certificates belong to the Kenya National Examination Council, NEC. The principal and the school are mere agents keeping those certificates on behalf of NEC. Students have paid for the exam. That was until recently, when the government is paying, except for repeaters and I think private candidates. Even private, I think government is paying. So the certificates have nothing to, the schools have nothing to do with the certificate. Hapo tumeelewana? So the certificate do not belong to the schools. The exam is not by the school. The exam is by NEC. The certificates belong to NEC. And NEC is giving the schools to give them to students. The minister, before he resigns, and is my boss, must know that pension used to be treated in the same manner. The time for an old man to leave, watu wanakuja na karatasi wanaanza kusubvert. Oh, sako ulikuwa na deni ya sako, sijui ulikuwa you are surcharged, hapo ulipoteza nini, finally mzee anatoka kazini bila nini, pension. Na pension si ya employer. Pension ni ya employee full time. What did the government do? The government came up with a law that forbids any deduction from anybody's pension. My time to leave when it comes, I saw somewhere people saying I retired a long time ago. I'm still there. When my time comes to leave, University of Nairobi, they will, hakuna mtu atachukua kalamu kusubtract hata shilingi moja by law. Why can't the minister think along those lines? That you create a law, a very clear law, that forbids the withholding of a certificate from a learner. So there's a criminal offense. So that you do that and you go to court. This is a sort of thinking. So are we clear about the separation?
Yes, yes.
That the certificates and the exam are a NAC affairs, not a school affair. The school is merely an agent. So now we address the second issue. If people know that if they don't pay fees, they will still get their certificates, what impact does that have? Now that is the issue to address. That is the issue that must be addressed separately from these certificates. What happens? Because people will know finally they will not have a problem picking the certificates. And you borrow from the university, for example, you do not do exams unless you are paid for your fees. Of course, there are a few that slip through the finger. You can toy with ideas like those. Maybe you may not sit for the exam, but the exam doesn't belong to the school. Are there cases we can help? Yes, there are. Are there schools that don't need that little money? Yes, there are schools. So people should sit down and figure out, before we arrive where you said, where I am, where we need free education, before we get there, what options do we have? People have said, how many funds do we have to support education? Bursaries, CDF, governors' bursaries, CG, what, national, what. If we put all these funds together, can we pick from these funds money to help such a desperate cases we are talking about? Okay? Other options are borrowing from places like Starehe Boys Center, where there is an arrangement where kila mtu ako na fisi yake kulingana na uwezo wake. Kuna mtu analipa 200, for example. I'm not saying there is. Let me say there's somebody paying 100. Same class, another is paying 70. You have been assessed. Ryan here, the Maasai boy, has been assessed because he has a lot of animals and lipa 120. Asijifanya maskini. Then another one, 40. The same class. Another one, 30. A few others, free. Ule analipa pesa mingi huyu Maasai Ryan. Hiyo 120 yake is enough to educate 3 people. Yeye na wengine wawili. These are options we can explore.
And the same idea that you're saying here is what has brought a lot of problems with the education funding model as well.
How? No, you see, I'm saying before we get to the free education, this is working at Starehe. Who tells you it can't work here? It can work. There are schools in this country that don't need even 1 shilling from parents. I've taken 2 children to Lenana. Does Lenana need fees? You find they are also withholding certificates. A school sitting on over 200 acres of land almost in Nairobi. Wakati wazungu walikuwa shule kama Chabakali kwa kwetu, they were generating their own electricity. Yeah, the school was generating its own electricity. Schools were growing their own food. Tunaelewana?
Yeah.
Schools were able to cater for the needy. We need to think proactively. But the idea of withholding certificates, that cannot be allowed. Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a conversation on the crisis that we're witnessing in the education sector in this country. And of course, the word out here is that it's a really ailing ministry. Let's wait and see what the government will actually do in order to make sure that our education is better in this country. Thank you for tuning in. You can weigh in and tell us what you actually think. Till we have this conversation again, have yourself a lovely day. My name is Evans Okinyi.